So we've read chapters 1 through 6, and there's a change coming over Mongoose. You've noticed that there's been a turning point. So um, he's kind of been bitten by the reading bug, so to speak. Get the little pun. We're going to read some more today, so let's see what happens. Chapter 7. Mongoose dipped the brush into the planter's peanut can and thought, Weasel ain't gonna like this. Weasel ain't gonna like this. He could not find Weasel after school that day, but he did find him late that night, at his bedroom window, knocking, waking him up from a sound sleep. Weasel carrying a gallon can of paint from home, indoor semiglass pale yellow, a rolling pan, and a small brush, and said, "We're going to work." Mongoose didn't argue. So here they were, over in the dark east side, where streetlights were few and broken windows and empty buildings were many. They had chosen one of those buildings, each taking a wall. "Goose, come here, quick!" Weasel called from around the corner. Weasel was standing back from his wall. He waved. "Down here." He walked down to the end of the long, low brick warehouse. Mongoose followed. "Now look," said Weasel. He switched on the flashlight he had brought. The beam meandered until it found a wide track of yellow paint, the beginning of the W. It was at the far edge of the wall, against the rainspout. "Okay, let's go," said Weasel. They began walking, trailing the light along the broad yellow letters. W, E, E, Z, E. By the time they came to the foot of the L, they were at the other end. Mongoose was impressed. He looked down the length of the building. "The whole wall?" "The whole wall," Weasel repeated. "Me. Never saw one that big. Ain't going to neither. It's a world record." They stood admiring it for a while. Then Weasel said, "So, what did you do? Let me see." Uh-oh, thought Mongoose. They went around the corner. Weasel trained the light beam on Mongoose's wall, panned across it. Nothing showed but bricks and window holes. "Where is it?" "It's there." The light came into Mongoose's eyes. "Where?" Mongoose turned away and pointed. "There." The light beam followed Mongoose's finger to a spot low on the wall, at ground level, in fact. There was Mongoose's name painted in pale yellow on a single brick. The light fell from the brick onto the ground. Weasel said, "You joking or what?" "No," said Mongoose. "What'd you do that for?" "I don't know, just did it." The light splashed into Mongoose's eyes. "You making fun of me because mine is big?" Mongoose snatched the flashlight and turned it off. "No. What do I care how big yours is? I just did it, that's all. Maybe I didn't want to waste paint. Maybe this brush you gave me is little. Look." He turned on the light and aimed it at another signed brick 10 feet away. "I did 3. Weasel thumped Mongoose on the chest. "You're crazy." He snatched up the planter's peanut can and poured its paint into his roller pan. Swooping high and low, he painted Mongoose, spelling it perfectly down the entire length of the wall. He stepped back, reviewed his work, nodded once. He left everything on the ground, paint cans, roller pan, and walked away. On the way home, Weasel talked about quitting school, about his red Firebird ragtop. Mongoose just listened and nodded, packing his silence around a secret. Ooh, that's an interesting way of saying things. He had not signed 3 bricks. He had signed 4. The 4th was all the way at the far bottom corner of the building, the very last brick. It was so low that it didn't even show. No flashlight, no sunlight would ever reveal it. He had dug dirt away to expose the brick. Then afterward, he had replaced the dirt. It was below ground and would be so forever, or maybe 17 years. On that brick was a name, but not his own. It was Cicada, cicada. Okay, chapter 8. Rain fell. The air was bitter cold, and the moment the rain touched the earth, it was ice. Then it snowed, 6 inches overnight. Then another 12. Sidewalks became trails, white, waist-high canyons. On one of these trails one night, Mongoose bumped into Weasel. Under a streetlight, Weasel spread open his coat. 2 pillowcases were pinned into the lining. You know what's going on. I was just coming for you, he said. Time to hit the minibar again. Can't, said Mongoose. Got to. We're out of paint. Got to go get more stuff to sell. Mongoose shook his head. Can't. Weasel closed his coat. Why not? Got to go somewhere. Where? The deli. Why? My mom. What for? Potato salad. Potato salad? Yeah. Weasel grabbed Mongoose's sleeve. Come on. You can get it at the mini mart. Mongoose pulled away. She likes the delis. Gotta go. Mongoose took off before Weasel could stop him. He headed for the deli, but when he came back to it, he just walked on by. He turned a corner, doubled back, and soon he was entering the public library. He opened his coat and pulled out I Wonder. The same lady was behind the counter, smiling, expecting him, it seemed. Here's the book back, he said, holding it out. She wasn't taking it. You got to give library books back, don't you? She nodded. When you're finished with them. He held it out farther. I read it, he added, feeling proud. The whole thing. She smiled. But are you finished with it? This lady was getting on his nerves. I just said I read it. Her smile went. She fixed her eyes on him. But are you finished with it? He stared open-mouthed, hooked like a fish on her eyes, her words. It seemed he stood there for days. At last he shrugged. Maybe not. She smiled. With the palm of her hand, she gently pushed the pro-offered book back to him. As long as it takes. Mongoose slipped the book under his belt. He felt silly. What if it's 40 years? The lady nodded smartly. So be it. As he pushed through the door, the cold air and her voice hit him at the same time. Goodbye, Mongoose. Chapter 9. It had been a strange week. For the life of him, Weasel could not figure out Mongoose. They had always been like brothers, even closer. As they met each morning on the way to school, so they had walked together through life, laughing at the same things, wanting the same things, except maybe cars. And now suddenly it was different, as if Mongoose were taking another way, seeing other things. Like painting his name really teeny on a brick. What was that supposed to prove? Whatever. Weasel figured it was about as weird as things could ever get. He was wrong. The strange week had begun the night Weasel knocked off Mini Mart for the second time. On the way to Mongoose's, he had met his pal, and Mongoose had said he couldn't go along, some dumb excuse about potato salad. Weasel had followed him to the deli, past the deli, and on to, of all places, the library. Weasel was seething. He waited, and when Mongoose came out, Weasel lit into him. This is a funny-looking deli. Weasel had to bite his lip. The look of surprise on Mongoose's face was so funny, but it wasn't hard to jump right back to mad. Where's the potato salad? They were out of it, Mongoose tried to say. World's worst liar. Weasel got into his face. I followed you. You didn't go into no deli. You came here. Mongoose didn't say anything. What could he say? Caught red-handed. He just looked at Weasel all dumb-eyed. Weasel hollered, You lied! The point being, you lied to me. Sure, over the years, they had told their share of lies, both of them. Who didn't? But never had they lied to each other. Till now. And it hurt. It hurt really bad. Only right then, Weasel didn't know he was hurting. He knew only that he was mad. as mad as he had ever been. So when Mongoose, with that dumb, stupid, guilty look on his face, said, "Ready to go to the mini-mart now?" Well, Weasel was so mad he wanted to slug him, but he didn't. He just poked him in the chest, kept poking and backing him up till he was flat against the door of that dumb library. And then he said, "You ain't going nowhere with me." And he ran. And he knocked off the mini-mart by himself that night, walked out of there bulging like some two-pack Santa Claus, went home, stuffed the loot under his bed, didn't eat a bite of it, started crying as soon as he laid his head down in the dark, the hurt coming on now, bit a hole in the pillow. For 2 days, he walked straight to school, did not meet up with Mongoose. By the second afternoon, he had sold the loot and bought 4 cans of spray paint, and cooled off about Mongoose. He must have, otherwise 2 cans would not have been blue. Without using the word forgive or the word hope or the word forever, he told Mongoose that he would forgive him for lying and cheating and double-crossing the other night, and that he hoped all this strangeness was gone now, so they could get back to being like they had always been, forever. He should have saved his breath. The next morning, waiting at the corner, he saw Mongoose coming to meet him with tiny mincing steps. He was counting. 66, 67. "What?" Weasel started. Mongoose scowled, flapped his hand, and went on counting. Weasel alongside. 100. Mongoose stopped and looked back. His eyes grew wide. He shook his head and whistled. Whew. Clearly, he was amazed at something. Weasel looked until his eyeballs creaked, but saw nothing amazing, only the sidewalk and the fronts of row houses and the crusty blackened leftovers of last snowfall. Mongoose pointed. "See that stop sign?" Weasel said he saw. "That's where I started to measure. From there to here is 100 feet. "So?" said Weasel. "That's how long a blue whale is." The way Mongoose said it, you'd think he was praying. "And you ain't going to believe how much his tongue weighs." "Aw, man!" Weasel clamped his hand over Mongoose's mouth, thumped him a good one, and shoved him in the direction of school. Next morning, here he comes, walking slow this time, staring down at his hand. As he got closer, Weasel could hear him breathing, fast, really fast. In his hand was a round stopwatch. He marched right on past Weasel, didn't know he was there, puffing like a jackhammer. Finally, Mongoose punched the stopwatch, swayed, tilted, gave Weasel a goofy, wobble-eyed look, and flopped into a dirt-spattered snowbank. For a full minute, he lay there gasping, like he was dying, worrying Weasel might make him wonder, "What do I do?" At last, Mongoose sat up, looked at the stopwatch, shook his head, gasping syllables. 250 breaths takes a hummingbird 1 minute. He held the stopwatch up to Weasel's face. "Look how long it took me." Weasel snapped. "I don't want to hear it." He left the baboon sitting there in the snow. Then Mongoose finally straggled into class that day. He didn't even try to hide the fact that he was in cahoots with Pocopson. He just plunked the stopwatch on her desk in front of everybody. He and the teacher didn't say anything, but they looked at each other and traded nods and twinkly little grins. Secret little grins. The chair Weasel sat on seemed to wobble. Okay, so we're going to stop right there.